There's a state where Pinellas County alone lost 12,000 residents between July 2024 and July 2025, the highest county-level decline in the country except for Los Angeles, where the home insurance premium rose 72% in 5 years to roughly 4.5 times the national average, and where deaths have outnumbered births since 2020. The state is Florida, and it's not even the worst on this list. Across America, the migration patterns of the past 5 years tell a story most people haven't pieced together yet. The Sun Belt and Mountain West states that absorbed the pandemic-era boom, the Florida, Texas, Idaho, Tennessee corridor that everyone moved to between 2020 and 2022, are now exporting people back, not in dramatic numbers, in the quiet, household-by-household way that takes 18 to 24 months to show up in the data. According to John Burns Research Consulting, Florida's domestic migration has collapsed from its 2022 peak of 310,892 net to 22,517 in 2025, an 88% drop in just 3 years. According to Atlas Van Lines, Texas dropped 7 spots in the conning state of the state's report, with affordability and climate concerns flagged as primary drivers. According to Move Buddha, the median time a household stays in a relocation destination before considering a move back has dropped to roughly 22 months for relocators who moved during 2020 to 2022. And underneath those numbers, the people who moved are doing the math. Insurance premium versus salary, climate risk versus tax savings, distance from family versus the price of being warm in February. And in 10 American states, the math has tipped from "this was a great move" to "we should have stayed." In this countdown, we're exposing 10 states people move to, then leave within 2 years. Not the cliché Florida, Texas leaving California version. The real one. The version where pandemic-era relocators arrived with optimism, ran into structura, conditions they hadn't researched, and quietly packed the U-Haul again. One state on this list saw home prices climb 56% since 2020 and now sees its newest residents leaving for cheaper alternatives. Another lost a single county's worth of population in 12 months, the worst county-level decline outside Los Angeles. A third had its largest single migration corridor reverse direction in late 2025. Think about it. You probably know someone who moved during the pandemic. You probably know one who already moved back. You probably trusted that the migration story was simple: blue states losing, red states winning. The story is more complicated. It always was. Subscribe before your friend's great move becomes their "we're moving back" announcement. Like the video if you've ever helped a friend pack a U-Haul twice in 3 years. Now you'll know why. Let's break it down. Number 10. South Carolina. The Palmetto State that's been America's #1 inbound destination for 4 years, where the insurance premiums on the coast just climbed 60% in 2 years, and where the math is starting to crack for the people who arrived expecting paradise. There's a state where Myrtle Beach has been the #1 retiree relocation destination for 3 consecutive years, where coastal home insurance rates have climbed sharply since 2022, and where Hurricane Helene's inland damage in September 2024 reset everyone's understanding of South Carolina is safer than Florida. Welcome to South Carolina. South Carolina is the state currently leading every inbound migration ranking in America. South Carolina was the fastest-growing state by percentage in 2024 and 2025, with population growth of 1.5% to 1.8% annually. The brand has been Florida without the chaos. The lower cost of living, the no state tax on Social Security retirement appeal, the Atlantic coast without the hurricane intensity of Florida, or the cold of New England. And underneath that brand, a set of new pressures that are starting to show up in the data. The numbers. South Carolina's net domestic migration was a sizable 66,622 in the year ending July 2025, the highest in the nation. South Carolina coastal home insurance premiums climbed roughly 60% between 2022 and 2025 as carriers reassessed coastal risk. Hurricane Helene caused over $40 billion in damage in September 2024, with significant inland flooding in the South Carolina upstate, an area many had assumed was geographically safe. South Carolina's Myrtle Beach metro home prices climbed approximately 35% between 2020 and 2024, narrowing the affordability advantage over Florida. South Carolina's property tax structure on second homes and out-of-state purchaser residences ranks among the highest in the Southeast. Reddit quote, South Carolina was supposed to be the smarter Florida. Then Helene flooded the mountains. What it's like. Moving to South Carolina is like dating someone who's recently single, recently fit, recently popular, and starting to act exactly like the ex you left. Picture this. You moved to Hilton Head from New Jersey in 2022 for retirement. The first year was perfect. The second year, your home insurance premium climbed 28%. The third year, the dock at your community needed replacement after Hurricane Helene damage. Your special assessment was $14,000. Your insurance carrier sent a notice that your policy would not be renewed. Your only available carrier doubled the premium. You're 67. You're starting to talk to your spouse about North Carolina, where your daughter lives, or back to New Jersey, where your investments are anchored. Where it gets uncomfortable, South Carolina's structural problem is that the state's appeal was built on a comparison to Florida that's been narrowing. Insurance has climbed. Property prices have climbed. The hurricane risk has been reassessed by every major carrier, and the property tax structure on out-of-state purchasers, the one who drove the inbound migration, has not been reformed. Sharp contrast. South Carolina and North Carolina are direct neighbors. North Carolina has gained more in absolute population terms, but at a slower percentage rate. South Carolina's faster growth rate has stretched its insurance, infrastructure, and housing capacity in ways North Carolina's slower pace hasn't. Same coast, slightly different growth math. South Carolina isn't failing because South Carolina isn't beautiful. It's failing for the recent arrivals because the cost structure they expected has shifted faster than they planned for, and the math they ran in 2022 doesn't hold in 2026. Number 9. North Carolina, the Tar Heel state where Charlotte rents climbed faster than wages, where Hurricane Helene's mountain damage was unprecedented, and where the inbound migrants are starting to hit the same affordability wall they came to escape. There's a state where Charlotte and Raleigh have been among the fastest-growing metros in America, where the home prices have climbed approximately 50% since 2020, and where Hurricane Helene caused historic damage in the Asheville and western North Carolina mountains in September 2024. Welcome to North Carolina. North Carolina is the state with one of the strongest inbound migration brands in America: Charlotte banking, Raleigh-Durham research triangle, Asheville mountain culture, a statewide narrative of growth, opportunity, and reasonable cost of living. And underneath that, the same housing cost compression that's hit other Sunbelt destinations. The numbers. North Carolina's net domestic migration was approximately 64,000 in 2025, second highest in the nation. North Carolina home prices climbed roughly 50% between 2020 and 2025, with Charlotte and Raleigh metros leading. Charlotte median rent climbed approximately 45% between 2020 and 2024. Hurricane Helene caused unprecedented damage in the Asheville metro and western North Carolina mountains in September 2024, with damages over $40 billion regionally. North Carolina's home insurance market has had pricing pressure due to Helene reassessment, with rates rising in mountain and coastal areas. Reddit, quote, North Carolina was supposed to be the affordable South. Then everyone moved here, the rents doubled, and the mountains flooded. What it's like. Moving to North Carolina is like dating someone who used to live with their parents and now has roommates and a much higher rent. Picture this. You moved to Charlotte from New York in 2022 for the cost of living and a finance industry job. Your salary was good. Your rent was $1,800 for a two-bedroom in 2022. By 2026, your rent on the same apartment is $2,650. Your home ownership math, which seemed achievable in 2022, has stretched to mid-2030s. Your friend in Raleigh is dealing with the same numbers. Your colleague in Asheville is rebuilding after Helene. You start having conversations about Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or Indianapolis, where the math still works. Where it gets uncomfortable, North Carolina's structural problem is that the inbound migration created housing pressure that has compressed the affordability advantage that drove the migration in the first place. The state's economy remains strong. The job market remains competitive. The cost of living, however, has converged toward the levels new arrivals were trying to escape. Sharp contrast. North Carolina and Tennessee are both strong inbound states. Tennessee has remained slightly more affordable on housing. North Carolina has compressed faster. Same southeast region, lie different cost trajectories. North Carolina isn't failing for arrivals because the state isn't desirable. It's failing for some recent arrivals because the cost structure has compressed faster than wage growth, and the math that worked in 2022 has changed by 2026. Number 8. Colorado. The centennial state where Denver tax burdens climbed alongside the housing market, where the wildfire and water risk has reset insurance assumptions, and where the Mountain West dream is being repriced. There's a state where Denver's median home price has climbed to over $600,000, where the state's wildfire and drought risk has driven insurance carriers to reassess coverage, and where the cost of mountain town living has separated from the wage structure of most Coloradans. Welcome to Colorado. Colorado is the state that anchored the Mountain West migration brand for over a decade. Denver Tech, Boulder Research, mountain culture, outdoor lifestyle, a statewide narrative of growth and quality of life. And underneath that, an affordability crisis that has been intensifying since 2020. The numbers. Colorado's home prices climbed approximately 38% between 2020 and 2025. Colorado's wildfire risk has driven insurance market disruption, with multiple carriers reducing coverage in mountain and forest-adjacent counties. Colorado's state and local tax burden has climbed, with property tax assessment changes affecting homeowners across the Front Range. Colorado's mountain town median home prices in places like Aspen, Vail, and Telluride have separated entirely from the local wage structure. Colorado's net domestic migration has slowed dramatically, dropping from significant gains in 2020 to 2022 to roughly flat in 2025. Reddit quote, "Colorado is what happens when the Mountain West dream becomes the Mountain West margin call. What it's like. Moving to Colorado is like dating someone who's outdoor. Sigh, attractive and surprisingly expensive once you actually live with them." Picture this. You moved to Denver from California in 2021 for the lifestyle. You bought a home for $580,000. Your home value is now $710,000, but the property tax assessment increase has hit hard. Your home insurance premium has climbed 40% since you bought. Your wildfire risk premium got added in 2024. Your kid's private school tuition is climbing. Your friend who moved to Boise in 2022 is talking about Texas now. Your other friend who moved to Reno is talking about Idaho. You're starting to research Tennessee, where your sister moved. Where it gets uncomfortable, Colorado's structural problem is the cumulative weight of housing, insurance, and climate risk on top of a tax structure that's been climbing. The state's economic engine remains strong. The lifestyle remains appealing. The cost structure has caught up with, and in some places exceeded, the alternatives that drove the original migration. Sharp contrast. Colorado and Idaho are both Mountain West states. Idaho was the affordable alternative to Colorado for a while. Idaho is no longer affordable. Colorado has been compressing along similar lines. Same region, very different starting positions, and similar destination conditions. Colorado isn't failing for arrivals because Colorado isn't a great state. It's failing for some recent arrivals because the affordability advantage that motivated the move has narrowed substantially. Number 7. Montana. The Big Sky state where home prices climbed 56% since 2020, where Bozeman became one of the most expensive small cities in America, and where the recent arrivals are quietly leaving for places they used to scoff at. There's a state with population around 1.1 million, where home prices climbed roughly 56% since 2020, where Bozeman has become one of the fastest appreciating real estate markets in the country, and where the cost of living has separated from the local wage structure dramaturg. Ickley. Welcome to Montana. Montana is the state that absorbed an outsized portion of the pandemic-era Mountain West migration. Yellowstone region, Bozeman tech and finance, whitefish ski culture, Big Sky lifestyle branding, and underneath that branding, a small state economy that has struggled to absorb the cost of living changes the migration brought with it. The numbers. Montana home prices climbed approximately 56% between 2020 and 2024, among the highest percentage increases in America. Bozeman's median home price climbed to over $700,000, separating it from the rest of the state. Montana's median household income sits around $66,000, well below the wage structure required to support the new median home prices. Montana's net domestic migration has slowed substantially from its 2021 to 2022 peak. Montana has limited employment diversification, with significant reliance on tourism, agriculture, and federal employment. Reddit, quote, "Montana was beautiful and affordable. Now it's beautiful. What it's like. Moving to Montana is like dating someone whose family is genuinely lovely and whose house has tripled in value while the kitchen still doesn't work. Picture this. You moved to Bozeman from Seattle in 2021 for the outdoor lifestyle. You bought a 1,800 square foot home for $620,000. Your home value is now $760,000. Your property taxes have climbed alongside. Your job is remote, which is fine. Your spouse's job in healthcare in Montana pays significantly less than it would in Washington. Your kids' activities are limited. Your social life is great in summer and isolating in February. You're starting to research Boise, Reno, and even Spokane. Where it gets uncomfortable, Montana's structural problem is the small state mismatch between high housing costs and the local wage structure. Tourism has been strong. Agriculture has been steady. The new tech and finance jobs that anchored the boom have not grown at the rate that would justify the home prices. Sharp contrast. Montana and Wyoming are both Mountain West states. Wyoming has not had the same level of in-migration and has not had the same housing cost increase. Montana has absorbed the migration and the cost increases together. Same region, very different inbound dynamics. Montana isn't failing for arrivals because Montana isn't beautiful. It's failing for recent arrivals because the cost of living has caught up with the lifestyle in ways that the original migration math didn't account for. Hey, before we get into the rest of the list, the states we're about to cover are the ones where the inbound migration was strongest, where the boom was loudest, and where the recent reverse migration trend has been quietly showing up in the data. If this list has been useful, hit subscribe, because the next one we're working on is 10 American cities where the property tax bill just doubled, and you'll want the names. Like the video if you've ever helped a friend unpack a U-Haul and felt the unspoken question, is this the right move? Drop a comment if you moved to one of these 10 states, then moved back, or are considering it. Real conversations happen in the comments, and I read them. Now let's keep going. Number 6. Nevada. The Silver State where Las Vegas unemployment hit 5.7%, where home sales hit their lowest level since 2007, and where the no state income tax appeal got priced into a housing market that's now correcting. There's a state where Las Vegas's unemployment rate climbed to 5.7% in 2025, where 2025 home sales hit their lowest level since 2007, where the population growth has slowed dramatically, and where the recent arrivals are absorbing the consequences of a tourism-dependent economy that's softer than they expected. Welcome to Nevada. Nevada is the state that absorbed major California migration during the pandemic. No state income tax, lower cost of living than California, Las Vegas hospitality jobs, Reno tech corridor, and underneath that, an economy that depends heavily on tourism, gaming, and California relocator demand, all of which have softened. The numbers. Nevada's net domestic migration has dropped from its 2021 peak. Las Vegas's unemployment rate climbed to roughly 5.7% in 2025, well above the national average. Las Vegas 2025 home sales hit their lowest level since 2007. Nevada home prices climbed approximately 35% between 2020 and 2024, then began to soften in 2025. Nevada has lost residents to Idaho, Arizona, and Texas in 2025, according to recent moving company reports. Reddit, quote, Nevada was supposed to be the cheap California. Now it's just the place California migrated to before California's problems caught up. What it's like. Moving to Nevada is like dating someone who used to be your friend's spectacular fiancé and is now your average ex. Picture this. You moved to Henderson from Los Angeles in 2021 for the no state income tax structure. The first 2 years were great. Your home value climbed. Your tax bill was meaningfully lower. By 2026, the housing market has softened. Your home value is roughly flat from purchase. Your unemployment-adjacent industry is hiring less. Your friends from California are moving to Texas or Idaho instead of Nevada. Your spouse is talking about Boise. You're considering it. Where it gets uncomfortable, Nevada's structural problem is being economically tied to a tourism and California overflow model. The tourism has been volatile. The California overflow has shifted to other Mountain West destinations. The state's recreation, gaming, and hospitality economy has not diversified at the rate that would absorb a slowdown. Sharp contrast. Nevada and Idaho are both Mountain West states with no income tax appeal. Idaho has continued to attract migration in 2025 and 2026 at higher rates than Nevada. Nevada has plateaued. Same region, slightly different inbound trajectories. Nevada isn't failing for arrivals because Nevada lacks appeal. It's failing for some recent arrivals because the no-state income tax structure has been priced into the housing market, and the structural pressures of a tourism-dependent economy have caught up. Number 5. Arizona. The Grand Canyon state where the heat got worse, where the water got scarcer, and where the home prices kept Phoenix and Tucson out of reach for the locals while the new arrivals reconsidered. There's a state where Phoenix recorded its hottest summer on record in 2024 with over 70 days above 110 degrees, where statewide home values dropped 6.8% year over year in 2025, where the Colorado River water allocation continues to face structural challenges, and where the recent arrivals are absorbing it all simultaneously. Welcome to Arizona. Arizona is the state that drew massive pandemic-era migration. Phoenix Tech, Tucson University, Sedona Retirement, Scottsdale Luxury, and underneath that, a climate and water reality that has accelerated faster than the housing market accounted for. The numbers. Arizona statewide home values dropped approximately 6.8% year over year in 2025. Phoenix recorded over 70 days above 110 degrees in summer 2024, the most on record. Arizona's Colorado River water allocation continues to face structural pressure due to long-term drought conditions in the basin. Arizona's home insurance premiums have climbed alongside other Sunbelt states, with desert and forest-adjacent areas seeing higher increases. Arizona's population growth has slowed substantially from its 2020 to 2022 peak. Reddit quote, Arizona was supposed to be the dry, affordable Florida. Then summers became 4 months of don't go outside between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. What it's like. Moving to Arizona is like dating someone gorgeous who's trying to convince you that the relationship's rough patches are just normal weather. Picture this. You moved to Phoenix from Minnesota in 2021 for the warm winters. The first 2 winters were perfect. The first 2 summers were brutal but manageable. By 2024, the summer was 70-plus days over 110 degrees and 4 months long. Your air conditioning bill in July was $580. Your home value has dropped 6.8% in the past year. Your insurance premium has climbed. You're starting to research Tennessee, where summers are hot but humid rather than incinerating. Where it gets uncomfortable, Arizona's structural problem is the compounding nature of climate, water, and cost pressures. The summers are getting longer and hotter according to documented temperature records. The water structural challenges remain unresolved. The home prices have softened, but the cost of cooling, water, and infrastructure has climbed. Sharp contrast. Arizona and Texas are both Sunbelt states with hot summers. Texas has more diversified water sources and slightly less extreme summer peaks. Arizona has been more exposed to compounding climate pressure. Same region, slightly different climate trajectories. Arizona isn't failing for arrivals because the state isn't beautiful in winter. It's failing for some recent arrivals because the summer has separated from the winter in ways that make the year-round math different from the snapshot they bought. Number 4. Tennessee. The volunteer state where Nashville traffic became a national story, where home prices climbed dramatically, and where the affordability advantage that drove the migration is narrowing faster than the locals will admit. There's a state where Nashville home prices climbed approximately 50% between 2020 and 2024, where Nashville's traffic ranks among the worst in America for a city its size, where the cost of living has compressed the affordability gap, and where the recent arrivals are starting to leave. Welcome to Tennessee. Tennessee is the state that became one of America's primary inbound migration destinations in 2022 and 2023. No state income tax, strong music and cultural identity, Nashville healthcare and tech expansion, Knoxville University appeal, Memphis logistics, Chattanooga manufacturing, And underneath that, a Nashville metro that has absorbed migration faster than its infrastructure can support. The numbers. Tennessee gained 325,319 net residents from 2020 to 2024. Nashville home prices climbed approximately 50% between 2020 and 2024. Nashville's traffic congestion ranks among the worst in America for cities of its size, with average commute times climbing significantly since 2020. Tennessee's net domestic migration has slowed in 2025 from its 2022 peak. Tennessee's median household income sits around $63,000, putting pressure on housing affordability for in-state residents. Reddit, quote, Tennessee was supposed to be the affordable Music City. Now, Music City has California prices and Atlanta traffic. What it's like. Moving to Tennessee is like dating someone who used to be the underrated friend in the group, and now everyone's dating them, and they're acting weird about it. Picture this. You moved to Nashville from Chicago in 2022 for the no-income tax appeal and the music scene. The first year was great. The home you bought for $48,000 is now worth $620,000. Your commute to your downtown office has gone from 25 minutes to 50 minutes. Your kid's school had a 12% enrollment increase year over year with portable classrooms. The neighborhood that was 70% locals when you bought is now 50% recent transplants. You're starting to research Chattanooga, Knoxville, or Birmingham. Where it gets uncomfortable, Tennessee's structural problem is that the migration came faster than the infrastructure, the housing supply, and the local wage adjustment could absorb. Nashville has had to add new housing, new road capacity, and new school capacity in compressed time. The infrastructure investments are real but lagging. Sharp contrast, Tennessee and South Carolina are both strong inbound states. South Carolina has spread its migration across more cities. Tennessee's migration concentrated heavily in Nashville, creating compounding pressure. Same Southeast region, very different distribution patterns. Tennessee isn't failing for arrivals because Tennessee isn't a great state. It's failing for some Nashville arrivals because the city's infrastructure has not kept pace with the migration, and the affordability advantage that motivated the move has narrowed. Number 3. Idaho. The Mountain West state where Boise home prices peaked at 26.3% appreciation in May 2021, where year-over-year price growth has now collapsed to 1.1%, where foreclosures climbed 94% year-over-year, and where the boom has ended in real time. There's a state where home appreciation peaked at 26.3% in May 2021, where year-over-year price growth had collapsed to just 1.1% by January 2026, where foreclosure filings rose 94.34% year-over-year in October 2025, and where the recent California arrivals are absorbing all of it simultaneously. Welcome to Idaho. Idaho is the state that became the iconic destination of the pandemic Mountain West migration. Boise Tech, Coeur d'Alene mountain culture, Sun Valley luxury, a statewide narrative of growth, opportunity, and California refugees. And underneath that, a housing market that has corrected harder than nearly any other in America. The numbers. Idaho home appreciation peaked at 26.3% in May 2021. Idaho year-over-year price growth had collapsed to just 1.1% by January 2026. Idaho recorded 206 foreclosure filings in October 2025 alone, up 94.34% year-over-year. Idaho's Tax Foundation State Business Tax Climate Ranking dropped 4 spots in 2026. Idaho's net domestic migration has remained positive, but has slowed substantially from peak years. Reddit quote, Idaho was the next big thing in 2021. Now it's the place where the California migrants are quietly putting their houses back on the market. What it's like. Moving to Idaho is like dating someone who was the most popular person at the party in 2021 and is now the slightly awkward one wondering why nobody's RSVPing. Picture this. You moved to Boise from California in 2021. You bought a house for $620,000 that would have cost $1.4 million in California. By 2024, your home value was approximately $640,000. Your property taxes climbed. Your homeowner's insurance premium climbed. Your spouse's career advancement options in Idaho are limited. Your friends keep moving on, some to Texas, some back to California, some to Tennessee. You're starting to consider it yourself. Where it gets uncomfortable, Idaho's structural problem is the math of being priced for migration that has crested. The state's housing market was repriced upward to absorb California demand. The California demand has slowed. The replacement demand has not been at the same volume. Sharp contrast. Idaho and Wyoming are both Mountain West states. Wyoming has not had the same housing cost increase and is not absorbing the same correction. Idaho overpriced itself for a moment and is now absorbing the consequences. Same region, very different boom dynamics. Idaho isn't failing for arrivals because Idaho isn't beautiful. It's failing for some recent arrivals because the housing market correction has hit the same households that bought during the peak of the boom. Number 2. Texas, the Lone Star state that absorbed more migration than any other state in the past 5 years, where 102,000 Californians arrived in 2023 alone, and where Texas just dropped 7 spots in the conning state of the state's report as the consequences caught up. There's a state that received the largest absolute volume of inbound migration in America for 5 consecutive years, where home insurance premiums have climbed sharply due to climate-related risk reassessment, where Texas dropped 7 spots in the 2025 Conning State of the States report on municipal credit health, and where the California to Texas migration corridor has begun to slow. Welcome to Texas. Texas is the state with the strongest inbound migration brand of the past decade. Austin Tech, Dallas Finance, Houston Energy, San Antonio Military, no state income tax, lower cost of living than California, pro-business regulatory environment, and underneath that, the same housing cost compression and climate risk pressure that's hit every other Sunbelt destination. The numbers. Texas dropped 7 spots in the 2025 Conning State of the States report on municipal credit health. Texas became the 5th highest outbound state in 2025 according to North American Van Lines, replacing Washington in that ranking. Texas home insurance premiums have climbed alongside other climate-exposed states, with rates rising 30 to 50% in coastal and tornado alley regions. Texas property taxes remain among the highest in the nation, with effective rates around 1.74% despite the absence of state income tax. Houston, in particular, has lost residents to other Texas cities and to Tennessee due to flooding-related insurance pressure. Reddit quote, Texas was supposed to be the affordable freedom state. Now it's a state where you save on income tax and pay it back to property tax and home insurance. What it's like. Moving to Texas is like dating someone wealthy who keeps hidden expenses you don't find out about until the 3rd year. Picture this. You moved to Austin from California in 2022. The salary was higher. The home prices were lower than San Francisco. You bought a 4-bedroom for $740,000. Your property taxes are $14,800 a year, more than your former California state income tax. Your homeowner's insurance has climbed 35% in 4 years. Your kid's private school tuition has climbed. Your spouse's job in tech has tightened. You're starting to research Tennessee, where the property tax burden is significantly lower. You're not the first. Where it gets uncomfortable, Texas's structural problem is that the no state income tax appeal was real, but the property tax structure substituted for the income tax in ways recent arrivals didn't fully model. The home insurance premium increases have compounded. The infrastructure pressure in Austin, Dallas, and Houston has compounded. Sharp contrast. Texas and Tennessee are both no state income tax states. Tennessee has lower property taxes and lower home insurance premiums. Texas has higher both. Same income tax structure, very different total cost of living. Texas isn't failing for arrivals because Texas isn't a great state. It's failing for some recent arrivals because the total cost of living math, after property taxes and insurance, didn't match the pitch. Number 1. Florida. The Sunshine State that has been the iconic American migration destination for 50 years, where Pinellas County lost 12,000 residents in a single year, where home insurance premiums have climbed 72% since 2019, and where the migration boom has visibly cracked. There's a state where Pinellas County lost 12,000 residents between July 2024 and July 2025, the highest county-level decline in America except for Los Angeles, where home insurance premiums have climbed 72% since 2019, where deaths have outnumbered births since 2020, where the net domestic migration has dropped from 310,892 in 2022 to 22,517 in 2025, a 92% drop. Welcome to Florida. Florida is the state that became the symbol of pandemic-era American migration. No state income tax, warm winters, beach access, retiree-friendly, lower cost of living than the Northeast. And underneath that, the most documented and most accelerated reverse migration trend of any state in America. The numbers. Florida net domestic migration was 22,517 in the year ending July 2025, down from 300,892 in 2022, a 92% drop in 3 years. Pinellas County lost 12,000 residents between July 2024 and July 2025, the highest county-level decline in America except for Los Angeles. Florida home insurance premiums have climbed 72% since 2019, roughly 4.5 times the national average. Florida deaths have outnumbered births since 2020, with the deficit projected to hit 50,000 by 2035. Florida home prices in coastal areas have stagnated or declined in 2025 due to insurance-driven affordability constraints. Reddit, quote, Florida was the destination state. Now it's the state your retired neighbor moved away from in 2024. What it's like. Moving to Florida is like dating someone you've known your whole life who's now expensive, getting older, and noticeably less reliable than the version you remember. Picture this. You moved to Tampa from New York in 2021 for retirement. You bought a home for $580,000. Your property insurance was $2,200 in 2021. Your insurance is now $5,800 in 2026. Your homeowners association assessment increased 40% after Hurricane Milton repairs. Your home value is roughly flat from purchase. Your daughter who lives in North Carolina has been suggesting you move closer. Your friends in Sarasota are talking about Tennessee or Georgia. Your other friend just moved back to Long Island. You're 71. You're starting to seriously consider it. Where it gets uncomfortable, Florida's structural problem is the cumulative weight of climate, insurance, and demographic pressure on a state whose entire migration model was built on year-round affordability. The hurricanes have intensified. The insurance market has been disrupted. The cost of living has compressed against retirement fixed-income reality. And the migration that built modern Florida has been quietly reversing. Sharp contrast. Florida and North Carolina are both southern destinations. North Carolina has absorbed Florida leaver migration in significant volume. Florida has lost more residents to North Carolina than at any time in the past 30 years. Same Sunbelt orientation, very different climate insurance profiles. Florida isn't failing for arrivals because Florida isn't paradise. It's failing for many recent arrivals because the structural pressures of climate, insurance, and infrastructure have caught up with the retirement affordability model that drove 50 years of migration to the state. So there it is. 10 states people move to, then leave within 2 years on the public record in Census Bureau Vintage 2025 estimates, in moving company reports, in IRS statistics of income migration data, in conning state of the state's analyses. States where the inbound migration created housing pressure that compressed the affordability advantage. States where climate-related insurance disruption changed the math. States where the boom-era arrivals are absorbing the consequences of a market that's correcting. States where the political conversation continues to celebrate the inbound migration without addressing the reverse migration that's quietly building. The American states absorbing the reverse migration in 2026, places like North Carolina, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and parts of the Midwest are not winning because they're trendy. They're winning because they offer the cost of living and lifestyle conditions that the original Sunbelt and Mountain West destinations have lost. The 10 states on this list represent the rest of the migration story. The Sunbelt destinations whose insurance markets have been disrupted. The Mountain West states whose housing markets have priced out the migration that created them. The Sunbelt adjacent states whose infrastructure has not kept pace. The boom-era destinations whose math has changed in 4 years. The good news, you can know this. The Census Bureau publishes annual vintage estimates for free. The major moving companies publish annual migration reports. The Conning State of the States report tracks state credit health continuously. You can read this. Most people don't. Most people watch the moving truck arrive next door and assume the inbound migration is permanent. The reason people move to these 10 states, then leave within 2 years, is because the structural conditions that drove the migration have shifted faster than the local economic narratives have updated. The math is harder. The cost is higher. The climate has changed. The insurance has been disrupted. And the residents who arrived hopeful are quietly running the numbers and choosing the alternatives. If this list helped, share it with the friend who just announced they're moving to one of these 10 states. Hit subscribe, because next we're breaking down 10 American cities where the property tax bill just doubled. And you'll want to see if your city is on the list. Drop a comment if you moved to one of these 10 states, then moved back, or are considering it. And remember, the worst migration story isn't the famous one. It's the quiet one where someone arrives full of hope, runs the math 18 months later, and quietly drives the U-Haul back the way they came.